Okay, so let's start. So again, thank you to everybody that has joined this afternoon, this evening. As for those of you that attended the London webinar last week, last Sunday, the content will be quite similar in terms of the layout. However, obviously the information is going to be different. One thing to note in the presentation is I've not put any fancy animations on. This is really for your information to take away. So the slides will be very content heavy, so that all of that information is compiled when we send it out, so that you don't have to worry about making notes right now. You will get the full presentation and the webinar recording, so that at a later date you can look back. There will be links on the presentation to websites that you can go to. So you will be able to take this away. So don't worry too much about making notes, okay? So for those of you heading to Boston, I know the time is ticking. Everybody, I'm sure, is getting very excited about their move. But I know one thing that does cause a little bit of anxiety, shall we say, is the accommodation, right? Making sure that you know where you're going to be staying, that the accommodation is in a safe and secure place, and that what kind of budgets, etc., you need to be looking at. So I've known from my previous years with students, accommodation is always one thing that does worry students. If there is anything additional that you require following this presentation, the presentation is going to be quite broad. Obviously, we can't work on an individual basis. So if there is additional information that you do require, then please do reach out to your enrollment advisors, and they will be the ones that will be able to go into a little bit more detail when looking at specific accommodation for yourselves. Okay. So what am I going to cover in this presentation? A big factor for most people is the budget. So what kind of budgets you have versus the amount of budget that you generally should be setting. Now, what I will do is I will look at this over a range. So not just looking at one specific price range, but I will look at a range of different options for those of you that do have different budget requirements. Where to look, obviously, if you have never been to Boston before, which a lot of you will not have, then you will not know what these locations are. I have put maps, I've put transportation links on there. So at your own time, please do go back through the presentation and look specifically in terms of the locations. The biggest part about this presentation is Hult Housing Boston. That is our campus housing, which is brand new for this year. You will be the first students that will be staying, so everything is brand new. It's a fantastic accommodation, and it is right next door to campus. So for those of you that like a lie-in in the morning, then this will be the ideal option. But however, I'll also look at private rentals. I know that the accommodation on campus won't be for everybody, so we'll talk about private rentals. We'll talk about how to secure those properties, what to do, the general advice that we give to students, that we've seen from previous years, and then what to do if you are wanting to share accommodation with other people, okay? So what I generally advise all my students to do is to have these questions ready when you're planning your accommodation, right? So it's really important that the planning and the preparation part is the most important. And these are typically the questions that you need to be asking yourself when you are organizing and setting out the accommodation for yourselves. So things such as, what is your budget? For those of you whose parents are financially supporting, this is definitely a conversation to be having with them. For those of you that are self-financing, really look at it throughout the full year, breaking it down month by month. Obviously, your accommodation doesn't always need to be paid for in advance. So if you can increase your budget because you're paying over a longer period of time, then think of that also. Looking at the bedrooms, so if you are wanting to share, whether you're wanting to have your own place, if you're taking your family, what kind of size of an accommodation are you looking at? The type of accommodation, do you want to be in Hult House? Do you want to be on your own? Do you want to be a little bit more independent? Do you want to live further away from campus to have more of the city life? What kind of location are you happier coming further out of Boston and therefore using the transportation? What are you near in terms of the public transport? Are you near bus stations? Are you near subway stations? Also factors that in your personal life are important. Are you near the nightlife? Are you near a park? Are you near outdoors where you can run, where you can play football? Is there a library nearby? So all of the factors that in your own personal life are important, think of those as well. A big factor is whether or not you feel you are going to rotate, because that will have an impact on the length of the contract that you can take. The bonus with Hult House is that we do offer the shorter term for the rotation students and the full term for those of you that are just wanting to stay in Boston. For those of you that will be privately renting, that is something that you will need to consider because a lot of the rentals will be 12 months, okay? But we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. What type of contract will you need? We'll go into that. We'll also go into, the types of contract that you can get. And then finally, are you looking for roommates? You will be able to use the WhatsApp group and also the Facebook groups if you are looking for flatmates. Are you looking to share an apartment, a house, so therefore are you wanting your own bedroom, or are you happy to share a room also, because that is going to be an option for you, okay? So for most of you out there, this is one of the most important factors. Now, one thing that I really want you all to know is this is an average housing and utilities. So what we have done is we have looked previously from students that have studied with us before and what they have spent. Now, you need to bear in mind that there will be some students that will do things on a budget, therefore will be on the lower scale. And there will be students who are fortunate enough to have the flexibility of a budget, therefore those will be bringing the average up. What we've done is we have broken it down into different scenarios and what the budgets are kind of connected with those scenarios. So if you are sharing a house with roommates, that is a house, so you will generally find that will be 3, 4, 5 people in a larger house. There will, of course, be a shared kitchen. There will usually be 1, 2 ensuite bathrooms. There will, sometimes only be the 1 bathroom, but you would have your own room. So that on average is between $700 to $900 a month. Now, when we look at that, we look at the range is depending on location, quality of building, and the amount of other people you're sharing with. You then have the sharing apartment with a roommate. 800 would be that you would need to be quite far out from the university, from the business school, because that, when you're looking at, say, 2 people in 1 apartment, to get a 2-bedroom apartment for $1,600 a month, then you will need to be a little bit further away from the school. The higher end of that is if you are closer, that, you on average around the school campus, you're looking at around about $2,500 to $3,000 for a 2-bedroom. So obviously splitting that between 2 people. Then for those of you that are wanting to live alone, you of course do have to pay for that luxury, which can be anywhere between $1,500 to $2,500. For those of you that have a higher budget than that, then you can discuss this with your enrollment advisors, and you can look at the options when you have a more flexible budget. We've also given the average utilities, so you will be looking at around about $75 to $100 a month for utilities, by that we mean your gas, electric, water, and all of those bills that are mandatory. Then you have your television and internet, which will range between $50 to $80 a month. Now, again, that is dependent on how many people you share with. For television and internet, it is one cost, and therefore that would be split between the amount of people that you are staying with. Okay, so hopefully that's quite clear. Like I said, just to reiterate, that's an average. For those of you that are on a tight budget, then the more open-minded you are, the easier it will be to get accommodation, okay? So the biggest factor that we have, or the biggest benefit to the Boston campus, is that we have the brand new Hult House Boston. So there is the link when you get this presentation that will take you directly to the Hult Boston page on the website. This is a beautiful Cambridge campus, okay? So the building is right next door. Like I said, it is brand new. So it's all modern, state-of-the-art living. And it will literally take you 2 minutes to get to the campus, which I think for some of you is ideal. Some of the factors to mention is that there is an on-site gym and climbing wall. There is an additional charge for that if you were wanting to use it, but it is there should you wish. You have laundry facilities on each floor. There is internet throughout. There is air conditioning, access to soccer field. There is also study areas, which I think is important for a lot of people. There is an auditorium for events. So for those of you that are looking to get involved in societies and clubs, then this will be an ideal place if you can't get any space on campus. For those of you obviously security conscious, there is 24-hour security, okay? So the building is monitored at all times. Cambridge is a very safe place to start with. However, the 24-hour security, I think, is just an added bonus. Then there is also a free shuttle to Cambridge and the North Station in Boston, which is very handy if obviously you are wanting to travel. So just to keep in mind that there is that accommodation as well. So in terms of I've just noticed, sorry, there is a couple of questions coming up. I'm going to answer all of the questions at the end, just so that we can run through the presentation and then go through the questions, okay? So the housing in Hult House. So there are different room options, and it is completely dependent on your budget and your personal choice of living as to what you choose. The most cost-effective option is the double room. So that's a dorm room option. For the full year, that will be $1,250 per month, okay, per person per month. So it is that top, if you can see the images, it's the top option, the top image, sorry, that is the shared dorm room. With dorm rooms, there is the amenities. So the kitchen, there is a kitchen for all of the students that will be in dorm rooms, and there is a bathroom with all of the dormitories as well. There is also a single room option. So you wouldn't have a kitchen in your room. Like I said, it would be that shared kitchen option, but this would mean that you would have nobody else in your room, and that will be $1,700 per month, okay? You then have the studio apartment. So the studio apartment does have a kitchenette in with your bedroom and your bathroom. So therefore you will not need to use the shared option. That for the full 12 months is $1,800 per month. You then have the 2-bedroom apartment, which I think is a very good option for those of you that are going to be staying for the full year in Boston and that will be wanting to share. So we can find you a roommate if there is availability. And what we will do is we will look at all of the students that have secured their place for the double apartment, and then we will arrange sharing if needed. For the full year, it's $1,500 per person per month. Okay, now what the benefit of the 2-bedroom apartment is that you have your own kitchen, you have the shared bathroom, but then you also have your own bedroom. So it is less than the standard single room. You still have your own room, but you get the benefit of having your own kitchenette. Okay. There is also 8-month options. I think it falls under, as 9-month options, which are for those of you that are going to rotate. Now, that is slightly more expensive, obviously, because we don't have that capacity for the rest of the year when you're not going to be there. So that is slightly more expensive, and all of that information is on the website. So I do want you to go and do your own research, as well as obviously using the presentation. Something that I wanted to mention about the dorm rooms, because a lot of people get worried when they're sharing a dorm room that it's very undergraduate focused. It's not just for undergraduate students. What we found is that around 30% of postgraduate students have reserved a room at Hult House. They have been looking at dorm rooms over apartments. They're more than happy, to share that bathroom and that kitchen. And obviously the cost that you can save on that is very good. So don't worry that it's just going to be undergraduate students. Like we said, there is a good proportion of postgraduate students also going for the dorm room. You also get a very strong community feel. Obviously, with the shared living areas, you find that you can integrate a lot and you're not as secluded. Another myth is that if you live in the dorm room, you can't drink alcohol. That's absolutely not true. If you are over the legal drinking age, now as I'm hoping everybody is aware, that is 21 in the States, then you are fine to drink alcohol and there is no curfew. Okay. Please just be mindful of your housemate. If they have exams or an early start, then just be mindful of them. But no, there is no curfew set by the housing. Again, myth 3, as I've already said, you have your communal kitchen so that you can cook any meal that you like. So that is not a worry for you. Okay. So that's it in terms of Hult House Boston. I will advise everybody, if you are going to Boston, then please do go to the Hult House Boston first. Make that your first point of call. Check through all of the information on that website. If you've got further questions from that, please let your enrollment advisors know. One thing that I want to mention before moving on is the procedure for securing your room. So when you log in when you go into Hult House Boston, if you want to choose a room, you will have an option to choose your room. It will then ask you for your student ID number. That student ID is on your application. It's on your student invoice. If you cannot find it for whatever reason, please contact your enrollment advisor. You would input that number and then it will ask you for a login. Now, you should have all, as you confirmed your seat for Boston, you should all have received a login through your email for Hult House Boston. Okay, please check your junk mail if you can't find it in your inbox. Please check the email that you have that we have registered for you to make sure it is the email you're checking. The last scenario, if you cannot find that, please contact your enrollment advisor as they will be able to locate that for you. Okay, once you have logged in, you then can reserve your room. Now, by just reserving your room, that does not mean it is secured. That just means you have highlighted your interest in that room. The only way you can absolutely 100% secure your room is by paying a $1,000 deposit. So very similar to your confirmation deposit that you paid, you can go through and pay via the Flywire portal, but that needs to be paid in order to secure your room. That is only refundable if you do get the visa rejection. Okay, as with your confirmation deposit, it's the same setup. If you obviously do then go on and keep the room and study, then that will be deducted from the payment that you're needing for the living. Okay, I just wanted to mention that because sometimes students are a little confused. If any other questions, like I said, on Hult House Boston, then please do let your enrollment advisor know. Okay. Moving on to what next. If you have looked in Hult House Boston and it is not an option for you, whether you don't want to be that close to campus or it's out of your budget, then the next thing that you can do is you can look into a couple of websites that help you with choosing your location. So I have got a map to show you where all of these locations are, how close they are to campus. Usually what you find is the closer you are, the more expensive they are, okay? What you can see here is that a lot of the prices for the average one bedroom are more than the Hult House Boston. So for those of you that are on a set budget and are wanting a one bedroom, then the Hult House Boston is a good option unless you are happy to move further out. Okay. Again, these two links, Thrill List and Jump Shell, once you get this presentation, you can use the links to click through to help you with, finding out your location, right? That's just location based. This is a breakdown of the average costs of a one bedroom apartment in the different areas. Now, I know not everybody is looking at a one bedroom apartment, but what this does do is it shows you comparatively the costs for the different locations. So, for example, if you're looking at this, let's say the second red line, which is Kendall, obviously right next to MIT, that is of course the most expensive in terms of a one bedroom apartment. That will also mean that it will be the most expensive in terms of a shared accommodation also. Whereas if you look down to the last block, which is Dorchester, that is the same. If it's the lower price, just below what it's around 1,300 in Dorchester for a one bedroom apartment. Similarly, comparatively to Kendall, it's a lot less for the shared accommodation also. Okay. So this is just for you to be able to get the comparison. You can then look at that in a little bit more detail through those two links that were on the previous slide. Okay, so this is Boston as such. Like I mentioned to you, the campus is in Cambridge. Okay, sorry, let me just go back. So the campus is in Cambridge. As you can see, the very big pale purple or lilac on the top left-hand side. Now, we are based on the Charles River. Okay, so we're right on the edge of Cambridge on that Charles River. So you will see if you're looking at anywhere other than Somerville or Charlestown, you will need to cross the water to get to, say, for example, Back Bay. You've got Park Square, Bay Village, South End, South Boston. You will obviously need to travel for that. You will have the transportation links for that, which I'm just about to go on to. Okay, so this is the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority. So this is the key bus routes that you have and the subway map, sorry. So you will need to, I know it's very small when you're looking on the screen now. So once you get the presentation, you can zoom in and you can look and see in terms of the locations, what is the transportation, where will you be close to. Please try and make sure that if you are going to be living further out, that when you choose your location, it is on a public transport link. If it's not, then either it's going to mean an Uber, which is obviously going to be a little bit more expensive, or it is going to mean a change. So, two different options, two different transport options. So please use this when looking at your locations and try and get as simple a route as possible. As you know, we don't want you to be late for class, so we don't want any transport issues that cause that. So this is also, I think, a really useful map to use, because what it does, is it again looks at one bedroom prices. Now I know it's quite old, 2015 and 2016. Unfortunately, that was just because that is the most recent one that this Rent Hop has done, and I thought it was quite beneficial to see the transit link versus the cost of accommodation. Now again, this is one bedroom prices, so obviously the further out you are, the cheaper it is, but bear in mind again, if you are sharing, that it won't be these prices, but relatively compared to other places, then you need to take that into consideration. Okay, so a little bit about the locations and the transport and the costs associated to that. Obviously, if you're not going to go for Hult House Boston, then you're going to be doing private renting. Now, what I don't want people to be worried about is that if they can't afford Hult House Boston, that they're worried that they're doing private renting. Remember, this is the first year of Hult House Boston, which means that every other student for every previous year has done private renting. Okay, so just keep that in mind. A couple of the pros and cons in terms of private renting, just so that you can, weigh up your options. Is Hult House Boston better, or is private renting for you better? Pros: you can obviously feel more at home, more comforts and space. You will usually have to choose your furnishings. You'll have to usually pay for that additionally. So you can obviously make that your own. You can find more appropriate prices for your budget. So if you are on a tight budget and you do need to live further out, then private options is what you will go for. You will have a greater choice in terms of the rooms. I know there are limited options in regards to Hult House Boston. You will be able to choose, from greater size of rooms. If you're happy with a box room, a smaller room, or you want an ensuite larger room, then you have the option when privately renting. You obviously also have access to your own kitchen and living space, which I think is, it's a great bonus. Cons: so you do usually have to sign a 12-month tenancy agreement. So for those of you that are going to rotate, that is something that you do need to consider. You can usually speak, there is a lot of student accommodation, student rentals, so you can sometimes negotiate this with your landlord or the agent, but please make sure that you check this before you sign any agreement, that if you are going to rotate, what is your get out clause, okay? Because otherwise you will be signed in for 12 months and you will need to pay for those 12 months. Rent is usually exclusive of TV license, internet, electricity, water. What that means is you're going to have to pay that on top. In Hult House Boston, the utilities for an apartment share is $100. That is set. That is not going to change. At least you know that will be what you need to budget. For the dorm rooms, there are no utilities. Obviously, you're using a shared bathroom and shared kitchen. So if you go for the dorm room option, that's another bonus that you don't have that utilities, okay? Letting agents and estate agents usually charge you a finder's fee, which sometimes can be $1,000. Okay, so they will usually charge you a fee. So please check that again before you sign into anything. The other factor is that it does take some time to find an accommodation. Generally, I advise you to do that once you get there. Obviously, with Hult House Boston, you can be assured that the accommodation is to a high standard. It's brand new. There's going to be no kind of problem, shall we say. With private renting, that's not always the case. So unless you have somebody in Boston that can go and look at accommodation for you, then you will need to do that when you land in Boston. So it can take some time. So if you are going to be private renting, my advice is to get short-term accommodation to start with when you first get there for your first 2 or 3 weeks, and then you can move into your private renting. So A few requirements for renting. Now, this is not an exhaustive list. This is not us telling you that this is everything that you will need. But what we advise is that if you have this, it will set you in a good stand when looking to rent. Usually it will mean that that is everything that you need, so that it should be a pretty seamless move. The first thing is sufficient funds to pay rent in 6 months in advance. Now, that doesn't always mean that you need to pay it 6 months in advance. Sometimes they will request to show that you can prove, a little bit like when you had to do your I-20, that you can prove that you can pay your rent in advance. Usually 2 months is the minimum that they require, but usually if you can pay 6 months in advance, then it's a lot easier option. Having an employer or personal reference. So that is basically to show that you would be a good tenant. If you have rented before, I know when I previously rented, I asked for a letter of recommendation from my landlord, which meant that if I was ever going to rent again, then it's good to take with you to show that you have been a good tenant. You will need your passport and your I-20, both hard copies. Of course, you need both of those to enter the US anyways, so you will have them, but please make sure that you have them to hand once you are there. Original bank statements from your home country. You should again have these for your I-20. This is how you will show to pay your rent. But if you have those, please take them so that you can show that. The acceptance letter from Hult or proof of student status, either once you're matriculated or even when you arrive, you will need your acceptance letter. Please print off a couple of copies of those or take the one from your acceptance pack. If you don't have sufficient funds in your account, then you may require a co-signer. That is obviously somebody to say that they will be happy to sign on your behalf, okay? General advice. So, sorry, let me move back. So this is something that we've just seen that we do like to advise our students. We're not lawyers. This is just something that we've seen previously, and we do like to give you the heads up. But one thing that I do want to mention is that this is your responsibility. Obviously, you're going into a postgraduate program at this time in your career and in your life, then it is your responsibility to make sure that you are checking everything thoroughly. Please do not sign anything that you have not fully checked. But this is just advice to make a note of from our own experiences as people that have rented as well. So break clause. If you plan on rotating, ensure that you have a 6-month break clause. What that means is that you can get out of your contract earlier, which of course, if you're rotating after month 8, is something that you will need to use, okay? If possible, I wouldn't say if possible, I would say try and make sure to take pictures of the rooms and furniture. It is sometimes called an inventory. Usually the agent or the landlord will do this with you. Basically, it is you showing that if there is any damage, any marks on walls, any broken furniture, anything missing, that they are stating that should be there, that you note that as soon as you move in, not even waiting a day, so that you are not liable for that, okay? Take your own current gas and electricity meter readings. The agent or landlord will give you these, but as a point of cross-reference, you don't want to be caught out for anybody's previous bills, so please do that as soon as you arrive on your first day. Another thing to mention is don't assume that if you are sharing that your housemates have done this, okay? If everybody is assuming that somebody else has done it, then nobody is doing it. So please, it's better to have 4 readings than it is to have none. Also, if your utility bills are not included in your rent, it is your responsibility to sort out your water, your energy, electricity, gas bills, and set up a new account. It is not down to your landlord or agent to do this. Again, it's not down to your housemates to do this. Usually, what I advise is for you to take ownership or to set ownership of one person that will be responsible for this. I generally advise it to be somebody who's quite organised. But once you get to Boston, once you matriculate and have your orientation, student services will be able to help you with, water supply providers and energy providers as well. Okay. Another piece of advice is, if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. If things are looking extremely cheap, and what I mean is less than what we have shown you, it obviously means that there is something wrong with the accommodation. Occasionally, properties advertised, unfortunately, do not exist, or they do not belong to the person placing the ad. Don't let this put you off. 99% of listings will be genuine, but please just be extra vigilant when you are searching. If you've got any worries, then you can also contact student services and just get things verified by them. Okay. So what we've done is we have given you a few tips just to make sure that you aren't going to be scammed, okay? The first thing is weak contact details. So if there is only a mobile number on the ad, then this should be an alarm. There should be an email address, there should be an office location, unless it is a direct landlord, but there should be more than just the phone number, okay? If it is a landlord, they'll generally have a landline as well. But if it's coming from an agent, 100% there should be a landline number. If there's lots of email or phone communication, if you are getting bombarded with calls from them, if they are actively, trying to sell you the accommodation, then this is probably going to be a fake agent or landlord, because they believe that that's them building your trust and trying to sell you the property. To be honest, there is going to be a lot of students looking at accommodation. They will not be short of people contacting them. Google the landlord, the agent, or the property. If you cannot find the landlord's name, the agent's name, then this is usually a sign that it's a scam. Finally, if it states no viewings allowed, this is the biggest red flag. Please do not go for any property that states no viewings allowed. You should always be able to view a property before you sign a contract for it, okay? So please do not go, even if it looks like it's $400, but if it shows any of these factors, it's probably not going to be a legitimate landlord or agent, okay? So before you sign, as with any contract, read every single detail on that contract. If you are not sure about something on your contract, then you can ask questions. You can visit a website called mass.gov to review any landlord or tenant laws and what their responsibilities are to you as a tenant. Please look over that so that you know your rights. Don't be afraid to ask to change anything on the lease, whether it be the start date, whether it be the length of the tenancy, sometimes asking for, an additional month's rent, than the normal 12 months, if you want to stay an extra month after your program has finished. The worst that they can say is no, but please ask changes if you feel that they need to be made. Get everything in writing. Please keep signatures on everything. Keep receipts. Keep any payments that you've made. Again, if you are sharing a house, if there is one person taking ownership for this, please yourself get copies of the receipts. Okay, if there are 4 people sharing, there should be the original and 3 or 4 photocopies, so that you yourself have that receipt. The last thing that you want is, for your housemate to lose it by mistake and then you to have no receipts. The landlord is absolutely required to give you a copy of the lease within 30 days of your occupancy. If you get past 1 month and you do not have the final copy of the contract in your hand, then please go back to the landlord. If you don't hear anything, go back to mass.gov and they will give you the next steps to do. Again, please photograph any damages, confirm them with your landlord. The majority of the time, it's just because the landlord hasn't thoroughly checked themselves. You know, if they're using an agent, they're relying on the agent to do that, but please just check. And also know the difference between legal and illegal fees. Again, this is all on mass.gov, so that is the website to go and check and read in detail. Again, please take accountability. The school is not responsible, your enrollment advisor is not responsible, your housemates are not responsible. It is your own accountability, okay? Here are just a couple of real estate agents that our students have used previously. These are the direct contacts to go to. They will all already be aware of Hult, so you can contact them through. Obviously, if you're not able to phone through to, these are all US numbers, by the way, so it's 001 and then the number. If not, then contact them through their email address, okay? And this is just another couple of search engines. So RentHop, PadMapper, and Housing Anywhere. Again, the highlighted blue links are the direct link to these websites. So these are search engines that you can use to find private rent and accommodation. Okay. The last thing just to mention is amenity style buildings. So for those of you that doesn't know what that is, amenity style buildings are serviced apartments. So it's generally a hotel based accommodation. Generally means that you will get breakfast included, you will get all of your amenities will be included, your linens and changing of your linens. Usually what they will do is they will offer a laundry service once a week for a certain amount of items. Basically, it's like living in a hotel for the time that you are there. If you want ease, if you want closeness to the campus, a lot of these are very close to the campus. If you want, that hassle-free of moving in and moving out. If you want to be on a shorter term basis, then this is the option for you to go for. However, it does come with a cost. So they are more expensive. You do need to bear that in mind. But if you have a flexible budget, if you are planning on rotating, if you want ease, then this is going to be a good option for you. Okay. Then what we have done is we've given a little bit more information. Again, I'm not going to go through all of this information because it's not applicable to everybody. As you can see from the snapshot, it is, quite an expensive option. But if you have the flexible budget, then it's a good option to go for. And finally, as I mentioned to you, especially if you're going to be doing private renting, then you will most likely need to get temporary accommodation for when you first arrive. Obviously, if family are traveling with you, then this is a good option. Airbnb is fantastic. I'm sure the majority of people on this call have used Airbnb before. But in addition, we have included some hotels that are close by that are on kind of different levels of cost. You can see how close and how far away they are. So if you're going to be private renting, please do. If you're not going to be able to move in as soon as you land, then these are a couple of good options for you. Okay. So that is it for now from my side. I am now going to go through a couple of the questions that were raised. Give me one moment to just go through the chat. There may be some of these questions that I don't know the answers to. So what I will do is I will find out the answers, and I can add it into the email that I will be sending out with the webinar, with the presentation. The presentation will come to you in probably 2 to 3 days. So if there's any questions that I don't know the answers to, then I'll get them answers put on that email. So let me have a look. The charge for the gym, is the charge for the gym or the wall or both? What time does the on-site gym open? Okay, great example. I don't know the answers to those straight away. What you can do is you can look on the website. If it is not there, there is actually a direct email address to Hult House Boston that you can ask these specific questions to. However, I believe the information is all on the website. It's quite an informative website. So please do go on there. But what I can do is I can check with my colleagues to see whether they do know if any of my team have the answers to that. May I switch to a different category of form at Hult House? I have confirmed for a single premium room, but prefer the studio apartment. I am 95% sure that you can. So what you need to do is you again need to email that Hult House Boston email address and give them obviously your student ID and say that you would like to now change the accommodation that you have confirmed for. If you've paid your confirmation deposit for it, then I'm pretty certain as long as the studio apartments are still available, you would be able to do so. Safia, yes, like I said, you will get a recording, absolutely. You will get both the presentation and the recording. Don't worry, you don't need to listen to me again if the presentation is all that you need really to click through. So does Hult House accommodation contracts have a break clause? Luzuko, yes. If you mean by break clause for the rotation, yes, you can either choose to do a 9-month option or you can choose to do the 12-month option. So, if you are looking at rotating, then that is an option for you with choosing a different, different time frame. Is television license included in Hult housing? So television license in the dormitories, yes, is included in the 1,250 if you're doing a shared dormitory. For the apartments and the studios, there is a utility fee of $100 that is included in the $100 per month. Okay, so hopefully that helps. Can a family stay at Hult House? Yes, but you would need to go for either the studio, the 1-bedroom, or the 2-bedroom. You wouldn't be able to do any of the sharing. If you're taking, your wife and your children, then obviously the 2-bedroom option is what you should go for. Please make a note that you will be bringing your family so that they won't offer the 2-bedroom to somebody else. But what that will mean is that you will need to pay for both bedrooms. So it will, of course, be a higher cost. What I would advise is that if you were looking at the 1-bedroom department, say it's just yourself, your wife or husband and 1 child, then the 1-bedroom apartment may be okay, but again, check that with Hult House Boston in terms of what their policies are. Okay, when can we change the option of our term in Hult housing? You should be able to choose that from the start. If you are wanting to go for the 9 months as opposed to the 12 months, then please do just let them know, because they will need to put people who are going for 9 months together in the same room. What if I choose 12 months and my roommate leaves after 9? Will Hult secure? And yes, so don't worry if you have gone for a 2-bedroom and your housemate, sorry, I lost my words. If your housemate is going for 9 months, then yes, it's down to them to secure a roommate. What I think is going to happen is students that are coming in on rotation to Boston will then take those rooms, if that makes sense. Okay. So I have opted for a 2-bedroom apartment and wanted to know if utility payment is done in advance for 12 months or monthly? I believe it is monthly. If it is not monthly, it will be included in your payment breakdown. So your accommodation isn't paid in advance. It is paid in the 3 installments. So the payments as per your payment schedule with Hult, which are your first payment generally would have come out in June. That will be the first payment. The second will be December, and then the final will be March. Okay. What happens to those doing the dual degree? What happens after the 12 months? What you can do is you can speak to Hult House, because of course we have dual degree students starting this year. There may possibly be an option for the 6-month option as well. But again, that will need to be discussed with Hult House Boston. That isn't something that your enrollment advisor or myself can do. So if you are going to do the dual degree, then that will be discussed. Usually what I would say is to discuss that once you're there, because I'm sure this is a very common question. We have a lot of dual degree students. The basic utilities is 100 exactly. So for those of you in a studio, a 1-bedroomed or 2-bedroomed apartment, the basic utilities per month is $100. That's obviously your gas, electricity, water, and television, etc., and internet. For those of you in the dorm rooms, like I said, that is included. So again, it's a good saving if you are going to do a dorm room, because it's already included in the dorm room cost. Okay, let me check on my next question. So I have answered these. Does Hult House have heaters as there's cold? It's cold the whole year. So it's not cold the whole year. That's a myth. I have been there in the summer and it was glorious. It was about 30 degrees. But yes, in the winter, it is extremely cold. Boston is very well prepared for the winter. So yes, there is heating in all of the accommodation in Hult House. Absolutely, we don't want you to freeze to death. So yes, there is both heating and cooling systems for the summer, because it does get quite warm in the summer as well. For the Hult 2-bedroom, that is $1,500. If a free space comes up, would it be going for $750 per room? No, so it's $1,500 per room. Okay, it's not split. It is for the two-bedroom apartment. I think it's $3,000 total for the 2-bedroom, so $1,500 each. What is the utilities cost for a dorm room and a double bedroom? That's included. So the cost is if you go back to the slide, it was $1,250 for a shared dorm room. Your utilities is included in that $1,250. Okay. Are you allowed to have visitors at Hult House Boston? Yes, you will be allowed to have visitors. They will need to sign in. You will need to just be mindful if you're sharing accommodation. Obviously, if you have your own bedroom, that's absolutely fine. But if you are sharing a dorm room, then please just be mindful that you have a housemate who is in the same room. There may be, I'm not sure of this as of now, but there may be limited time if you're sharing a dorm room as to when you can have visitors until. Sorry, I missed the earlier presentation on Hult House. Is there a provision for a family apartment? Yes, so that is the 2-bedroom apartment. That would be the provision for your family if you're taking your family with you. Okay, let me see if I have anything. Can you elaborate more on the dorm room at Hult House? Okay, so all of the accommodation is furnished in all the dorm rooms and in the apartments. What the dormitory room means is that there is no divide between the bedrooms. So there is one room which has your study space, so a desk each, and has 2 beds. There is no kitchen. There is a bathroom, but there is no kitchen, okay? So that is the dorm rooms. If any of you did study and stay in dorm rooms for your undergrad and you shared a room, it's quite like that. Okay, you have a shared kitchen, a shared bathroom. The double dorm room means that you will be sharing the bedroom with somebody else. Okay. Do you get the chance to choose your roommate at Hult House, or you can choose? So If you don't, if you haven't been able to find anybody, then we will, of course, connect you with somebody that you'll be sharing with. But if you have your own roommate, please state that. So if you already have met somebody on a meet and greet or through the Facebook group or the WhatsApp group, then if you're going for, say, the shared dorm room or the 2-bedroom department, then just let Hult House Boston know, email them, and then you will be able to share with the person of your choice. That makes it much better. Any additional fees at Hult House other than the utilities and the gym? Not that I'm aware of. That is everything that is the fees. Something to mention, there is obviously the 1,000 deposit and the one to secure the room, and that obviously gets taken off your final bill. There is also a damage deposit of $1,000, as with all accommodations. So there is that, and this is again just for the studio apartments and the apartments, it's not for the dorm rooms, that you do have to pay kind of that deposit. Okay. I've answered that about choosing your roommate. How hard is commuting by bike in Boston during the winter? Well, it is quite difficult, especially when the snow hits. Obviously, Boston is very accustomed to the heavy snow that they get, but so therefore there is, a lot of cleanup. A lot of the pathways will already be cleared. Ice, however, cannot be managed. It can be done. It's not impossible. It depends how far away you live from the campus, but the temperatures do get quite low. So if you are going to travel by bike, you will need very good thermal gear, jackets and thermal wear. Generally, I would say that you wouldn't be able to bike in the months of, say, January to March, because they can get quite heavy snowfall. Okay, but all public transport always runs. It amazes me how well prepared they are for the winter. Okay, so also, will there be an option to change rooms if a particular roommate is untidy or too loud? I honestly do not know the answer to that. That is something that you would need to ask Hult House Boston. Of course, it depends on the availability. My initial thoughts would be that they would discuss that with the person that is being too loud or untidy first. If nothing changes, then if there is the room to accommodate for that, then I'm sure we would do everything that we could. But if it is fully booked, if all of the rooms are taken, then that might be unfortunately not an option. That is going to be how it is with all accommodation. The only time you will not have that worry or that possibility of somebody being untidy or too loud is if you have your own place. If you share in private, if you share in Hult House, there is also always, unfortunately, that possibility that you might not have the most ideal of roommates. I've answered that. Are the rooms unisex? Again, I'm not 100% on that. I would presume that it will try to be same-sex. However, if it's unisex, if you absolutely do not want a unisex room, then please make that. We will absolutely accommodate you. If you want a same-sex room, that's absolutely fine. Okay. So for a shared single room of 1,500, which includes a 2-bed, I don't know whether I said that wrong the 1,500 for a single room, that is for one person. Okay, so 1,500. The least that it is for a room in Hult House is 1,250, and that is a shared dorm room, which means that you will be in the same room as somebody else. There is a partition between the beds, but it is the same room. Okay. Are amenities such as sheets, towels, pillows included? No, I don't believe they are. That is something that you will need to purchase on top. However, I am sure that the Hult House Boston will offer packages, but usually I know with the majority of accommodation that usually is something that you will need to provide. How big are the beds in the dorm room? There are standard single bed in the dorm room. I think a standard single bed is 120 by 160 or 180. And that's just from my own personal experience, I believe. Okay, I think I have answered everything. Let me check the chat. Any other questions from anybody else? On mattresses? Yes, mattresses are included in the dorm room. Anything else that pops up? If any other questions do come up, as you've probably noticed me saying, Hult House Boston is the best to contact. However, you do have your enrollment advisors as well. And for those of you that have worked with myself, of course, you can contact me. Amanda, the 1,500 is, yes, it's for the month. It's not annually. Okay. So if there is anything else, now is your time. Oh, okay. Let me check. Okay, so what you can do, so you asked how can you connect with the attendees of this seminar? Maybe you can choose a roommate now. That's a great idea. So what there is, so there's a couple of things. First of all, there is the Facebook group. So there are Facebook groups per campus. Okay, if you've not been added that, please let your enrollment advisor know and they will get you added. What we are also going to do is we will be doing so the WhatsApp group that most of you have been involved in now was, a lot of attendees. What we are doing is we will be coming away from that WhatsApp group and kind of closing that WhatsApp group down. And what we will be doing is we will be having a confirmed student WhatsApp group per campus. So the Boston campus, London, San Francisco, Dubai, there will be a WhatsApp group in there. That is not for the enrollment advisors to give you information. That is, we usually will add everybody and then exit the group so that you can, start making kind of connections there. But if you are looking for a roommate, if you are, wanting to share and you are wanting some advice of people that you can share with, then what we will do is please contact your enrollment advisor and we will connect you with other people that are going to Boston that are wanting to share. The WhatsApp group has not been set up as of yet. My goal was to have those set up by mid-June because obviously we've still got a couple of months until start term. So mid-June we'll have the WhatsApp group set up for the specific campuses. Okay. Kezia asked, how long do they give you to pay the installments? So the installments will fall in line with your tuition installments. So obviously June was the first payment, so I'm hoping everybody who is confirmed has paid their first installment, as that is securing your seat. So your first installment is due. Your second installment will be in December and the final installment will be in March. For those of you that are on the early payment plan, either to get the 3% discount or to do the dual degree, then your accommodation will fall in line with the standard payment plan. It will not go in line with the early payment plan. So you don't have to have all your tuition and all your accommodation paid before you start. Okay. Okay, fantastic. So thank you for your questions. Great questions. I hope I answered them well enough. Like I said, anything that I didn't know, what we will do is we will, first of all, you can speak to Hult House Boston or your enrollment advisor. If there was anything specific that I didn't know the answer to, then I will try and get those answers to you by the time we send out this presentation. Okay. So thank you for your time. Any questions, let your enrollment advisors know. I will get this presentation out to you within the next 2 to 3 days. Okay. Thank you very much. Take care.